This works. And here we are, and we're live. So,
We're live.
Rob, happy Thursday. Today, everybody, welcome. We're talking about should you rent or buy? Have you ever considered, maybe buying a house, but you're not sure if renting is right for you? Have you ever thought about maybe going back to renting after owning a home and maybe selling it for a good profit? I'm David Pipe, mortgage agent. I'm here with Rob Kent, who expert local realtor, and we talk every Thursday about local real estate matters, mortgage matters, how to maximize your approval, how to get the best house for you, or to sell your house for the most. So, Rob, like I said earlier, we talked about the rent versus buy question often, and I know I get a
Yeah.
lot of my clients coming through who are currently renters and are looking to make that jump into buying.
Yeah.
What do you see on your end when you have clients coming through that might be renting? What kinds of things are they thinking about when they consider that transition from renting to buying, or do you have people going the other way?
Well, I mean, sometimes you do have people going the other way. Not as often, obviously. But I do know of a scenario where somebody's looking to sell, and they're keeping their options open to either buying or renting, right? So they're thinking of taking the equity out of their home and then either putting it into a new home or to save up, rent, maybe save up, and then kind of do it all over again, what they just did. But I mean, right now, the people who are renting right now and thinking of buying, I think the main thing that they're thinking about is, can I afford to make the leap into home ownership? And especially with the escalating prices of homes right now, that is definitely a top thing on their mind, right? Can they afford it?
Right, right. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, that's the one of the biggest questions that clients are asking me when they're renting is about
Yeah,
affordability. This isn't a show on stress test, but recently in Ontario we
no,
had some tweaks to that to make things a little bit tighter. So this question of affordability always comes up. But you surprised me when you said that people are actually thinking about leaving the home ownership market and renting instead. But I guess
right.
that's really not necessarily as crazy of an idea for people to move and decide to rent. Maybe house
Yeah,
prices have become so high that they've cashed out, right, and they can rent. So,
yeah.
do you find that for your clients, there's one factor that tips them into buying, or one factor that turns them off when they're out there shopping for houses?
Well, I mean, like, the one thing that would be a positive would be the home equity, right? Starting to build your home equity, rather than paying rent and building the equity or putting the money into somebody else's pocket. It's now kind of putting the money back into your own pocket, by paying a mortgage. So I mean, that's one thing to think about. But again, there are pros and cons to renting and to owning. Like
Yeah,
now that you own, now you're paying property taxes. You're paying your utilities. Whether or not you had that set up with your rental, I don't know, but you'd have to look at all of the costs that are involved. One of the bigger costs would be like the land transfer tax, right? A
yeah,
lot of people kind of overlook that. If you're buying a new build, it could be something as easy as overlooking HST, right?
yeah,
If you're buying a new build, or the
yeah.
complications that come with a new build, like and there's lack of new builds going on right now, but delays and things like that, right? Which kind of puts you almost right back into the rental market, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
You are
interesting, yeah, the transition itself is tough, right? Either
Yeah,
way, if you're renting, it's certainly easy to keep renting, and that transition into buying can be quite expensive. I think people, one of the questions I get about the transition comes down to closing costs and
yeah,
the impact of, what it's going to cost me to move, right? So aside from moving
right.
expenses, and your down payment, which I think the down payment is probably the single biggest factor, that keeps a
That's
lot of
true.
people away from buying.
Yeah,
People need to have a small savings, or even a bigger than small savings, to account for things
yeah,
like land transfer. So, you know,
yeah,
aside from the transition costs of making the move, you hit a couple of points that I think are really important. So, whether or not they pay utilities built into their rent rate or they pay it separately, that's one question. But there are a couple of things when you own a home that are, unrecoverable costs, they say, right? And so I've
Yeah.
read that you should always look at what are your, unrecoverable costs. What are the things you have to spend money on that you can't get back? So number one,
Yeah.
of course, if you're owning, to me, there's three things. Number one, if you're owning a home, is property tax. So you're going to pay property
Right.
tax. You do get
Yep.
services for it, but you'll never get that money back. It's not
Yeah.
recoverable at all, and you don't pay that when renting. Number two, and I should back up. Property taxes, to give someone a sense of cost, usually amount to about approximately 1% of your house's assessed value, at least in the Southern Ontario area. So let's say you have a house that you purchase for, we'll use the magical 500,000 because it's easy.
Yeah.
So you've got 5,000 a year, or 1% of property tax. Then you've got, a couple of percent of mortgage costs, right? So yeah, you are paying yourself in a way because you have that equity that's growing, right? And you're
Yeah.
paying off your mortgage, but there's the interest component, right? So,
That's right.
we've got 1% for property taxes. Then you've got, in today's market, mortgage rates are, let's say they're in the low twos for most
Yeah.
buyers, right? So let's add on 2% to make it easy. So that's another
Yeah.
$10,000 a year for interest costs.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, there's maintenance, right? Because like if you're renting and the fridge breaks down, or you need to replace something, or you just call the landlord and they just do it, right?
Yeah.
But if you own the home, it's on you. So we have to come up with an estimate for annual cost of maintenance, including like your eventual roof and your eventual windows and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You could probably say that comes out to be like another 1%. So there's
Probably.
another five
Yeah.
thousand bucks a year on average, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
when you think about it, there's probably 4% plus of the house's value. So in a 500K house, the first $20,000 a year
Yeah.
you're never getting a dollar of real value for that directly, I
Right.
guess you could say. Although you can say that there's value of having the loan, because the mortgage, because you can buy that house and have that equity grow. So, I
Yeah.
guess you got to think, if I can rent for less than that, then maybe I would consider renting. So for what I'm saying is, let's say that on the $500,000 house, Rob, what can you get for 500,000 in Guelph nowadays? Like let's do like a apples out. What does somebody buy for
Yeah.
500,000?
Like a smaller townhouse or a condo, probably.
Like
Yeah.
three bedroom, two bedroom.
Uh, you might be hard pressed to get three, two. Yeah. Maybe
Okay.
three.
So let's say
Yeah.
it's a two-bedroom townhouse, small kitchenette, nice but not big, maybe a couple of bedrooms and small kitchen, small dining area. Okay,
Yeah.
so now to rent that house,
Yeah.
I guess the math says, would you be able to find that comparable house if you rented it? Could you pay less than the buyer's like sort of like sunk or non-recovering cost? Could you pay less than we said it was like, 5,000 for property tax, 10,000 for
Great.
interest, and 5,000 for maintenance? Could you do it for less than 20,000 a year, which I guess if you divide that is about what, 1,800 a month? Could you rent that
Close.
house?
It's probably pretty close, right? I would say no. I
Okay.
would say you're probably still renting that home. So that townhouse is probably still going to rent for, yeah, probably 1,800 to 2,200 right now on the market, I would think.
Okay. So maybe that's the question. I mean, of course, it doesn't always
Yeah.
come down to math, but when
No.
you're out there, searching, you can think about these three things, those non-recoverable costs. And of course,
Yeah.
there's equity growth, and there's, pride of ownership, and there's, the fact that you're paying off your mortgage and you're building an investment that will, hopefully fund, part of your retirement or whatever, your goals for your home are. But if you
Yeah.
if you could rent that house for significantly less than that 1,800 in this example, those like non-recoverable costs, maybe
Yeah.
you are better off to rent, because you could theoretically take that same money, pay your rent, and not have any real other
Yeah.
expenses, and go and invest the difference in and build wealth another way. So
Right.
there's, to me, like I know I know that I'm in the mortgage business and you're in the real estate business, but really, if you could find that place for a lot less than your sort of sunk costs, then maybe it's
Yeah.
worth looking at renting. But
Yeah.
let's flip it around another way.
Yeah.
paying those costs, I think that if you want to look at the benefits of buying, you're probably ignoring the fact that, we said invest the rest, right?
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
you won't probably be able to invest the rest and get the same amount of return that you might get on a house for a couple of reasons, right? I think we talked about last week. If you want
Yeah.
to check out our other video on is buying a house a good investment, this actually ties in nicely
Right.
because when you look
Yeah.
at the investment value of buying your home, with the fact that it's, basically tax free on your primary residence, you get the benefit of leverage, right? We talked about this, and you don't pay capital gains, so I would say that the investment value of that actually plays a pretty big part. And if you
Yeah.
can invest the difference, great. But I wonder if you'll ever be able to get the same kind of return you could get on, the growth of a house,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I sort of tell people if your outlook is really short term, if you're only going to stay there for a couple of years, maybe 1 year, or if you need flexibility, like hey, my job could change any minute, I could get
Yeah.
transferred, I could get relocated, my family situation is changing, I might have elderly parents, we might want to move in together, something in your situation that might make it make sense. Maybe renting makes sense in the short term, but
Right.
to me, if you can come up with a down payment, buying does present a much better investment opportunity.
It does. Yeah. And plus you're choosing your home too, right? You're choosing when you buy a home, you're choosing the home that you want to live in for the most part for a long time, right?
Yep.
Whereas, typically people who rent, they're just looking for something temporary, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you're looking for something to rent for the next, 10, 15, 20 years, right?
Often no.
So,
Often no. And, and
right.
and the other thing about that is that, and you said we were choosing, is that we all know that we look at the rental, we pick the one we want, but at any point the
Yeah.
landlord could sell the property, take it over for personal
Yeah.
use, right? And that changes your
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
They can also raise your rent, and I mean you
Yeah.
could argue that property taxes go up and so do other expenses, so everything gets more expensive over time. But certainly you have a lot more control over your destiny when you own the home, right? You
Yeah.
can choose to sell it.
Yeah.
You can take advantage of that gain. You don't have to leave if somebody wants to move their kid in. We always talk about the joke where someone says, "Oh, I have this house, but I want to, my son or daughter, I'm going to have them live in it because they're going to school in the city now, and whatever happens, and you have to move out." So
Yeah.
for that control, being able to, own the home probably gives you a benefit there too.
Yeah, you'd have so much more flexibility, right? If you want to put an office in your home, you have that. You have that ability. If you want to
Yeah.
build a garage or something like that, you have that ability. Whereas if you're renting, you're not going to do that.
Right.
Even
So
if
you
you
don't have
did
to ask
have the
permission,
flexibility,
right?
you're not going to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So you don't have to send the landlord an email to say, hey, does painting break does painting my room hot pink, does it violate my lease agreement or whatever, right? Where you don't
yeah,
that discussion never you can do anything you want that meets your decorative style, or
yeah,
you can invest in it, right? Like some people say, well, I don't want to bother doing this improvement because like it's not my house,
yeah,
right? So that pride of ownership thing plays in too. So it
yeah.
sounds like there are a lot of reasons to maybe consider renting if you're short term focused, or if you can find
Right.
amazingly cheap rent. But
Yeah,
there's so many reasons. Some of them are dollar wise, and some of them are just sort of those soft or those more sort of qualitative, items that would make buying the right choice.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for
So
sure.
I guess the only other thing I would add, Rob, and I'd love to hear your feedback, is that if you want to
Yeah,
get more help doing the math about this, there are lots of calculators online. We could put a link to one as well that shows you, if you did the math between renting or buying, when you compare interest rates and all that, what should you do? I have a feeling that it's a little more complicated than that, but that's a good place to start. Um,
yeah, yeah.
if you have questions about the value of renting or buying, I'm happy to help on the mortgage side. I can help you run the numbers and see what makes sense for you. And Rob, any final thoughts from you?
No, yeah. I mean, it's just, you do a list, right? If you're thinking right now, if you're watching this video and you're thinking, you're not sure if you want to buy or you want to rent, it's having a list, right? Pros, cons, what are going to be the benefits of renting? What are going to be the benefits, of buying, and outweigh, and what weighs more, and then just kind
Yeah.
of go with that. And it's about asking the questions and stuff like that. Like I had said before, I think a lot of people just kind of assume that they think they can't afford a home, or they don't know how to save up. But they can come to us, they can come to you or I or whoever, their bank, and figure that out, right? It's about having a plan in place so that if down payment is an obstacle, how do you overcome that obstacle as soon as
Right.
possible, right?
Yeah.
Or if there are
Yeah.
any other
Exactly.
obstacles. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I think people need to know that number one, licensed realtors can help you find a rental. They can help you
Yeah.
find a home. So contact Rob or somebody in your area if you need help finding or comparing or doing that math that we just did. Rob's happy to help. And if you need help on the mortgage side, understanding your numbers, your debt situation, knowing how much you might be able to afford, and getting yourself on a path to being able to afford a house, even if you're not totally ready yet, always happy to help. So with that being
Yeah.
said, thanks again for everybody who are watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great day.